I'm a test automation engineer at NewsUK. Today, I want to share with you some tips and tricks for writing your Cypress tests. If you have any questions after today's talk, or if you want to connect with me, here are my LinkedIn, GitHub, and Twitter links. So get in touch. Today, I want to first go through the journey why we choose Cypress as our test framework and what we discovered that Cypress cannot do for us. And then I'll go straight to the tips and tricks. In the tips and tricks, I'm going to cover how to set up configuration, how to work with iframe, how to do API testing, and some best practices. And also, I will cover UI testing as well. And in the end, is our Q&A session, so feel free to send us your questions through chat. So let's start. About 9 months ago, in my team, we decided that we need to upgrade our WebDriver IO either to version 5 or to choose something completely new. And we thought like, we actually did some research and found out it would take us same amount of time and effort to upgrade to version 5 or choose Cypress. And we just don't know whether Cypress is the right tool for us. So we did a spike. And here is what we found out. So the first, our developers really love Cypress because it looks just like their JavaScript code, and they can get started as soon as they look at the documentation, they know how to do it. And that kind of fit the purpose for us because we are moving away from the model where only QA write the automation test to one that developers will contribute and QA act more like a consultant to help them writing the tests and cover the scenarios that they missed. So we want a tool that our developers love. Here you go. And the second is that our test execution is really fast. So whenever you edit your test in your IDE, like Visual Studio Code, you can see your test run immediately in your test runner. Also, Cypress has really good documentation, almost has an answer for every question we had. But even if you didn't find the answer, because it is open source and it has a great community, if you go to GitHub issues, you will find that someone has already raised the issue you had, and they probably had a workaround, so you can try out and see whether it works. Our test run failures are all captured in our Circle CI by snapshot and also videos. So if you want to show someone why it failed, just replay the video. It automatically waits on commands, so you don't need to add extra toggle this, toggle that, or add async awaits and so on. And the last feature was not supported when we did the spike. This is cross-browser support, which is really important for testing, but it is now supported in Cypress version 4, so you can get support for Firefox and Edge. So that's the good part, but we also discovered there are certain things that Cypress cannot do for us, like visiting multiple tabs, visiting multiple domains in one test, or integrate with source labs. It simply doesn't work, and there isn't any workaround, I'm afraid, that I can share with you. If you want to know more about what has the differences between Selenium and Cypress, and how do I choose which one to use, what has advantages and disadvantages, I have linked here a webinar hosted by Maria and Gary. They actually went through very in detail what has advantages and disadvantages. So hopefully this will help you during your spike to find out the right tool for you. So let's go straight to the tips and tricks, where I'm going to use the real work examples of the problem we had and then the solutions that we discovered. So when my manager asked me to set up Cypress, obviously first thing is how do I set up? But as I mentioned, Cypress has great documentation, so you just need to read it. So to set up Cypress offered you 3 ways. First, use default Cypress.json, where you can put your base URL, your environment variables, or create a more private one, use Cypress environment cypress.json to store your environment variables and choose not to commit them to GitHub because you don't want to share them. Or you can export as capital Cypress _, then the name of the environment variable. Yeah, so this sounds like great to get started. Then we had a look at the config files we had. So for us, we had config for dev, config for staging, or we also want to do mobile test. We have cypress.mobile.json, or we want to use it for visual test as well. So I end up with 7 configs. But the question comes is how do I actually tell Cypress which one to use when I'm actually running it? This can be a bit difficult. But Cypress, as I go back to the documentation, you can use another 2 options that provided is first in my package.json file where you have the commands, you can pass the Cypress run command and then --env, the config file you want to pass it to. And here we also use the plugins and index.js to pass only the dev rather than the full name of the file. And basically this one is basically telling Cypress if I'm not passing anything, you can use the default configuration. So by using all 5 combined 5 ways that I can have the maximum flexibility of running my tests, then you might wonder, so why do you want to have different config files? What's the point of it? So that is because you will be able to do something like this. So by default, Cypress offers you cypress.json, where you have your base URL. But let's say my staging config, I want to have a different URL, different base URL, and you can actually overwrite it here. And for mobile, you can put user agent here as well. So all these options provides you the tools for you to set up your configurations. My next tip is also to do with flexibility, but it's more like a hack we discovered is how to run just a subset of tests in your test file. So why do I want to do it? It's because they had a third-party tool that it only works in dev. It doesn't work in PR. And obviously, for us, my dev and PR tests are exactly the same. I'm using the same test files. But what's the point of, if I want to run the PR test, I might need to copy the whole test in dev and create a new integration folder for PR. And this goes against the rule of dry, and there isn't a point of doing this. And then we go back and think about, maybe you guys have used it as well as cucumber tags. Tags is a great way for organizing your tests, and you can use it to run just a subset of your tests. So we want something like cucumber tags, but Cypress doesn't have it. So instead, we created a helper function called test filter. So with test filter, you can pass the tags and it only runs the test with that tag. And the way to use it is very simple: import the helper function, and then you can wrap your test around, pass the tags here as an argument. When you actually running the test, and this is the third option I mentioned before, to export as capital Cypress _. When you run this test, Cypress will take the prefix and think, okay, you have the environment variable test tags, and the value is dev, and then run the rest of the commands. So this is add more flexibility for you to run your test. Next question, next tips is to do with iframes. And if you have used iframes with Cypress, you will know that it doesn't work. And Cypress has this long battle with iframe for a long time. For example, this one is an open issue. Is started on 11th of May 2016. And 4 years later, it's still an open issue. It doesn't work, but it doesn't mean that you can't make it work. If you want to actually if your application uses iframes, then working with those elements in your iframes will require your own custom command. And here is one solution we come up with. So First, if you're dealing with cross-origin iframes, you need to set up the Chrome Web Security to false. Then you can use 3 commands to select the elements within your iframe. So first, side.get to get the iframe you want to target, then side.find to find the element within that iframe content. And then side.wrap is basically wrap the element in order that you can chain the proper Cypress commands on it. Here is an example. We have this command called click iframe element. So it's an element within the iframe. So first is side.get to get the iframe. Then I stored the content as a variable. Then find that selector within the iframe content. Then wrap it around to chain the commands on it. It's very simple. If you have your own solution, feel free to share with us. And yeah, so I'm sure like everyone has their own workaround. The next group of tips, I want to focus more on API testing. So with API testing, at NewsUK, we have a team that they have a node transformation server. It fetches the data from WordPress API and process data and transform it into a mobile application supported format. So before that, before we started working for this team, everything is done manually. They use Postman to check the request was sent and the expected response was returned. When we started on that team, we want to automate everything. So we used Cypress. And here is how we kind of like went back to the documentation, find a way to do it. So with Cypress, it allows you to make assertion on the request body, URL, and headers. And because we are the provider of this API, so we didn't really use stubbing, as you can see here. We want to use Cypress to test the entire life cycle of our XHR requests within the application. And because there is nothing being stubbed, that can be problematic, because if you are using a database, test database, and there is nothing there, so you will need to seed your database. So before every test, it can generate the state you wanted. And also because there is no real response, because there is a real response going through every single layer of your server. So obviously this is going to be slower, much slower than the stubbed response. But it does check the critical path, so because it's hitting on the real server. So Cypress actually recommended you to use it on the critical path and to add one of these tests in each per feature for the happy path. So here is, you can send a request and then make assertion on the headers, on the body, and so on. And as I mentioned, the second way of doing API testing is to stop on a response's body, status, and headers. And it works perfectly if you are on the client side, because with this, it allows you to take small control of the responsive body, the status, the headers, and you can even fake network delay. And stubbing is very fast as well. Most of the response will be returned in less than 2 seconds, less than 20 milliseconds. But the only disadvantage that you don't have any guarantee over the stubbed response, whether it is matching the real ones. So how do we do stubbing? And here is an example. We have 2 custom commands. So in the first example, I use side.server to enable stubbing. And then side.root kind of provides a routing table for you, so Cypress understand which request goes with which response. We just had an empty array as a response. And in second scenario is a cookie banner, because it's appearing on all the other tests. So we want to accept it automatically, but we don't want to go through UI to click on the button and accept. So we stopped the response as consented to to true, we set the value. So we don't have to click on the button basically. Here is an example of running this test. And you can say all your routes that stop the routes here. And even whether it's post request or get request. And Cypress will also log each of your requests. It also takes a snapshot of the DOM at the moment the request is made, and another snapshot at the moment the response is returned to help you with debugging if you need. So since we're talking about API request, I want to go on to talk about side-await. You can use side-await to wait for request and response, and there is a very good, it's very good to add this into your feature, and I'm going to show you what are the benefits is. And here is an example. So basically, when you are using side-await, you can use aliasing the route, and the way you do it is to pass. This is a pass I want to visit, and I'm saying the name of this side route is DFP. And then I need to refer to it again. All you have to do is to use side-await and then add, and then the name of the alias. So why do we do this? What's the point of it? So this prevents the next command from running in Cypress until the response has get back. So it guarded against the scenarios where your request might be initially delayed. And there are other benefits as well, because the failure message is much better. Because with all the other tools, maybe you will not be able to tell whether it's a problem in the DOM or there is no matching element for it. With side-await, you can actually pinpoint exactly what is the error here. As you can see, it's nothing to do with the DOM. It's because our request never occurred, it never go out. So it may be something to do with the URL of the request. And the third benefit is you'll be able to make some assertions on the XHR object, like URL, method, or status code. Since I'm talking about side-await, I do want to mention something we come across quite often in our code. We will see that a lot of people like to hard-code it the milliseconds for side-await commands. Actually, this is not good practice. Cypress actually suggests that you should never explicit wait. The reason that side-await existed is mostly for debugging purposes. Then you might wonder, so if I cannot do side-await, what can I do? So by default, every command in Cypress has a timeout of 4 seconds. If you want to increase the timeout, you will need to pass it as an object here. For example, I raised the timeout to 10 seconds. And what does it mean is Cypress, it will get the element and wait up to 10 seconds to be existed in the DOM, and then check whether it is visible. So what it means is that its maximum time is 10 seconds, but Cypress is always going to go back and retry and retry and retry. Maybe there is once the element is visible after 5 seconds, then you saved 5 seconds. Compared to just hard-coded value, because it's gonna wait anyway for full 10 seconds before it goes on with the rest of the commands. Cool. So we talk about the setup, configuration, and also the API testing. The next group of tips, I want to focus more on UI, because at NewsUK, we work for design system, and it's a new project, and we decided to use Cypress as our test framework as well. The first interesting problem we had is how to handle changing selectors. And what do I mean by that, changing selectors? So we use CSS in JS. And the problem is whenever you make any changes to your CSS style or your JS behavior and you build again, the selectors are going to be different. So you can't use ID or class or tag, any of this. Actually, Cypress recommends you not to target elements based on CSS attributes. and do not target elements that might change its text. It makes sense because the text might change. Like recently, we have a cookie banner. It changed from I accept to fine by me, and the test failed. So instead, Cypress recommends you to add a data dash attribute to make it easier to target. And that's what we did. We go back and ask our developers when they build this component to put this attribute for us, and then a description basically tell us what this button does. So when I'm writing my Cypress test, I can use this attribute instead of any class. The second interesting problem is to do with audio and video. So I'm gonna show you an example here. So we have a skipped tracked radio player. So it has 3 tracks. So the first track, title 1, is gonna play the radio, and if you press on the button, it's gonna go to second track. And if you press again, it goes to the 3rd track. So the interesting problem is how can you check which track is playing the right track? Like with manual testing, you can obviously listen to it, or there are other ways to do it. But with Cypress, is actually done very easily. Is to use, as I put it here, fixture. It helps you to load a fixed set of data in your Cypress folder. So here's what we did. We created this fixture called podcast.json, and it's an array of objects. The first object is the first track, then second track. And in our test, we're basically saying, go and play this audio and check if the audio's attributes src equals the first track. Then you're gonna click on the skip to next button and check the second play the second audio and check the audio's attribute src is equal to the second track, which is here. And it solved our problem. And this is another interesting problem to do with audio and video player, is to verify the volume set by your user. And I have a video to show you here. So in our audio player, we have this volume button. By default, is set to 70%. But we want to be able to save the user's preference. If the user chooses to mute the audio whenever he's playing this audio, next time when he visits a page again, he wanted to be muted. So how do you, if you think about how do you verify through UI, do I have to go select that element and check which position is on the track? How do I do it? With Cypress, because Cypress can access your browser, it means Cypress can access local storage. And you will be able to write something like this. So I'm checking whether when the user click on muted, it will be persisted when the page reloaded. So the user go and click on muted, and then I check local storage, the volume should be set to 0. Then I reload the page and check local storage, the volume should be 0 after I reload the page. Cool. So if you use Cypress for UI testing, or if you're building anything like design system and focus heavily on the UI part, you will know that accessibility is a very important part of testing. Although like for accessibility, about 80% of them need to be verified manually, for example, with a keyboard. But there are like 20% that you can use automation tests to check. For us, we used this package called Cypress X. So when you run your test as a unit test here, it actually shows you which accessibility rule it has broken. So your developer could have a look and go back to the designer and fix this problem very quickly. With, yeah. So with all this I've discussed is more focused on the UI. And the next tip I'm going to discuss with you is a bit sensitive or controversial, because I know that Cypress has a paid service for parallelism. For us, because we use Circle CI, and we realize that we can achieve parallelism with Circle CI. And here's what we did. And you can see that for this test, the first time we run it without parallelism is 4 minutes, 10 seconds. And after we run the test in parallel, is 1 minute, 54 seconds. We saved total 2 minutes, 26 seconds in one run. Fantastic. This is how we did it. So this is a Circle CI config job. So this is one of the job we have set up. And within this job, you can set the parallelism. So the parallelism basically means how many independent executor will be set up to run this step of this job. And the way you split is we used this globe pattern to check, oh, I only want to split the test that match with this pattern, and then tell it to split it. And then this command is basically saying whether we have enough tests to be split. For example, you might have 5 containers, but you got 5 tests, but you got 6 containers. Then one of the container don't have to run this command. Then you don't have to run it. And after you set up and run it in Circle CI, you can visually see the containers, each of the container running different tests. Obviously, the next run, they are gonna be allocated with another different set of tests. And you can see very clearly, I have 4 containers because I set it as 4. And since I'm talking about Circle CI and artifacts, I want to share this quick win with you as debugging your Circle test in Circle CI, your Cypress test in Circle CI. So this is from the artifact I just showed you. And if you add this step in your Circle CI config, you'll be able to see visually what are the test failures and exactly which step it failed in your Circle CI artifacts. So this really helps your developer or you to debug it really quickly, so you don't have to try to replicate it locally, because you can see it in Circle. Obviously, if you're using Circle. And the next one is to do with visual test. And I know that most of the QA has their preferred tool to do visual testing, and we all do it, and it's very important. This just want to share with you that you can do visual testing with Cypress as well. Here we are using a package called Cypress image snapshot, and it highlights the difference between the baseline image and the new snapshots. Here is just an example of writing your test. We have 4 articles that we want to check. So this is a mobile test, so I set the side of viewport as iPhone 5 because most of the bugs are turned to be on smaller devices. And then we visit URL, and side.hide article elements is to hide the elements that are always changing, for example, advertisements. And the most important command is side match image snapshot. So if you run it first time, you're gonna get your baseline image. And we all know that baseline image is your single source of truth, and it's very important to keep it accurate and up to date. If you're running your test in CI, we strongly recommend you to create a Docker image that's gonna simulate the same setup you had in your CI, because this will kind of eliminate the scenarios that there are differences being flagged, but it's due to your different setup. Like, for example, Node version or Cypress version. And the second time you run your test, and if it failed, you have a diff output folder, like here. And it shows you what has the differences. Then you can decide whether you want to update your baseline image or just to flag it as a bug. Cool. And that brings me to the last tip I have for today. It's more like question. Does Cypress support other languages? As far as I know, Cypress supports JavaScript, but as of version 4, it supported TypeScript as well. And this is actually a great news for us because recently we decided to use TypeScript for most of our application code. And we actually want to use TypeScript in Cypress test as well, because there is an advantage of using the same language for your web application and your tests. So you can share code and share knowledge, and your developer are more willingly to use just one language to write the test, write the Cypress test. Before the Cypress supported TypeScript, you have to use some transpilers like Webpack and Browserify, and this kind of a pain to set up, and it's annoying. But now you don't have to do it anymore. Everything is much more cleaner. Cool, and that brings me to the end of the presentation. I will try to answer your questions. So sorry, I got quite a lot of questions, so I'm trying to go through them from the latest one.
Yeah, I think there are lots of questions as well, and I think, yeah, you can just go from the top.
Yeah. So where will we, so there will be recordings, I think. Where will we find the recordings? Gary, I'm not sure where, where is the recording? Hello?
We will publish it, Zen, so no worries at all.
Okay, cool, that's good.
Yeah, cool.
So do you think that Cypress will overtake Selenium and replace it eventually? And if so, why do you think that would be the case? This is hard to answer because for myself, I've used both, and to be honest, both has its advantages. I think Cypress is going to be very popular because it's really easy to use. But for some scenarios, it really depends on your user case, which one is better. I would recommend you to watch that webinar video, that link I shared in the presentation, where Gary and Marie actually compared them. So in my presentation, I didn't really go to talk about Selenium. So multiple domains, I came across this blog. Thank you very much. It might be useful. That's great. Thank you for sharing with us. What do you mean by mobile? Cypress runs only on the browser. Yeah, I think the user agent is just we only changed it's not a real mobile device, obviously. We just changed the setup so it will simulate the experience as you run in your mobile test. How could we manage the shadow DOM elements? I'm not quite sure what this means. I haven't come across it before. Gary, do you?
Yeah, I replied in the chat because I think there's still an open issue with the built-in support for shadow DOM elements, but there's some workarounds documented on the Cypress GitHub issue. So I think like if you just have a look, then hopefully like you find a solution. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have to downgrade Chrome to 69 to make it work for iframe. Yeah, that's yeah, I know that's a pain. We had a similar issue before. Can API testing with Cypress replace tools such as Postman? I don't think Postman do automation test as far as I know, but I think we did replace it and it works perfectly for us. So maybe. Any workaround for using window fetch calls rather than. I don't. Well, I actually come across this. I don't think Cypress support the fetch calls. It is only for XHR. Yeah, actually, Marie just posted there are some workarounds here, so check it out. Do we also have the GitHub reference along with recorded videos? All the code I've used is from work, so I'm afraid we can't share the code with you. But if you have any specific questions, feel free to ask us. Will the slide deck be available as well? Yeah, I can share the slides with you. The parallel setup doesn't work with Jenkins. I haven't tried on Jenkins. So I don't know anyone here has tried on Jenkins and can share with us. Best size CD root tool. This is difficult because I'm not a DevOps. So with Cypress, I think like for us, CircleCI works, but really don't.
I think I can. Yeah, I think I can answer that question. So Daniel, yes, I think we can definitely integrate it because one of my customers is using Cypress along with Azure DevOps. So it is. Yes, it can. It is possible.
Great, that's good. When I'm trying to merge multiple awesome reports, the test code is displayed. Don't really get this one.
Yeah. Maybe Gary, do you have some inputs? Because I know you've worked with Mocha Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the question? I just lost the question.
So when I'm trying to merge multiple Mocha Awesome reports, the test code is displayed. Any workaround for this?
I think there is no workaround as such for that, but I think we can generate it with different HTML files separately. I don't think so that it is possible for us to combine all different HTML reports as of now, but I think there is a requirement for this as well, which is there in GitHub issues for Mocha. We are just waiting for that to fix, get fixed as well.
Okay, I think this question is more for the ambassador. So can we get the copy of the presentation? For me, that's yes. Second, can Cypress community take an initiative to create a social group on any platform where technical queries related to Cypress will be addressed? Specifically, QA needs a forum. Gitter chat by Cypress is not so useful.
Yeah, we can probably, Gary, maybe after this, we can think of having like a Slack channel for Cypress.io community group, and that might be helpful.
Yes, I think so, because all these questions what folks are asking are really valid ones actually. So I think, they don't have to wait for any sessions like this to get answered. If we create something like that, people can directly ask there. That's really a good idea, and we will definitely consider that, and we'll just try to create one.
Yeah. Cool. Just going back, I think I missed a few questions. So this one is, what are your experience with visual regression, especially due to the fact that browser and especially operating systems produce slightly different results in many cases because of color and shadow calculation differences, driver differences, extra. So for us, we always use like Docker image to mimic, to kind of mimic the setup we had in the CI. This kind of eliminates some of the scenarios. This is a pain, to be honest. We had a lot of visual differences due to image resolutions, and we end up with a tool that could it checks the differences through a different algorithm, which is only checking what difference that human beings can visually see. And this actually helped us a lot because we don't want to have all the differences flagged up. That's called false positives. So it's maybe check out more on this to like investigate in a tool that might help you. Do you run Cypress on pre-push as well as the CI, or just CI? It sounds a lot with API testing, visual and end-to-end to run locally each time. So we only run it in the CI. So it's set up in our PR environment, dev environment, and staging. So the developers are actually the ones running it. So I don't have to run for them. I just need to help them to set up the test, and then when they push the PR, it automatically runs their code. And if there is anything flagged up, they will need to fix the test. Otherwise, you can't merge the PR to dev. So for visual regression tool, we used it's called ApplyTools. So it's using this algorithm to check like a human eye. Yeah, so have a look at them. I think I've answered most of them.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Xin. Is there any other questions that folks wants to ask? Yeah, there is one more question, Xin.
Okay.
Can I mock requests that happen on server-side rendering?
I didn't have this experience. Marie, have you tried it?
I think with Cypress, so at the moment they only have built-in support for XHR. So as long as Cypress can intercept the request, then you can easily mock them. So the way to check it is if you load your test runner, when you visit a page, you'll see a list of requests that are marked as XHR. If your request is there, then Cypress can mock it. If not, then like I know there's some workarounds, but if it's not listed, then it could be quite a pain to mock them.
Yeah. There is one for performance test, performance of the web page. I think I would think to use the proper tool to do the performance testing. For us, we use the Lighthouse for the front end, and for the back end, we use the Taurus. They are all open source tools, I believe, and they are working very well for us, and we run them in our PR pipeline as well. Thank you. So can you say the name? It's called ApplyTools.
Yeah.
I think there's one question from Rai. So I know we had an issue before where our Cypress test was running, but we managed to fix it by changing our Docker image because we were using Electron to run our tests on the CI pipeline. Yeah. And our tests would just fail. It won't even like finish the execution. So maybe if you update the Docker image that you're using, see if that can help you, because it definitely helped us when we experience Cypress test crashing, and it was because of the Electron browser having some issues.
And there is one more question from Anand. He's asking, do you have a Cypress framework created with page objects? We tried creating one, but could not achieve. So I have a sample template, Anand. I will just share it with you after this session.
Great. And last one, what's the best way of dealing with cross domains? Well, for us, we didn't find a way to solve the problem because there is no workaround, but we think about the test again and think, oh, we shouldn't actually done the test that way. So we restructured our test so we don't have to do it. sorry, it's an easy way for us to fix it. So I don't really have the answer to your question. Do you use page objects in your Cypress setup? No, we didn't use page objects.
I think that's a common question that is coming from many folks.
Yeah.
Guys, I just wanted to tell one thing. So I think officially, Cypress doesn't support page objects as such, but they do, suggest app actions. Maybe we can just have a look at it. I just pinged the URL in the group chat as well. So you can just go through that and see if that helps you out.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, Elena.
Yeah. I think we kind of gave up because we saw, oh, because the devs are gonna write those tests, so let's focus.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. There you go, guys. I'm just trying to.
Cool.
Okay. I think we can freeze it, Mary.
Yeah. I think we'll definitely take an action from our side to create a forum to basically like have more of this like community like led like questions, because like I know some of them maybe we don't have experience yet, so we couldn't really answer some of the questions directly. But if we have maybe like a Slack like channel, we'll basically like invite like everyone to everyone. So we'll definitely take an action from our end to get it set up.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mary. And thank you so much, Xin. We should, for this wonderful session for us, taking us through the journey of how, NewsUK has migrated from Selenium to Cypress. And I hope, guys, this was very useful session for you. We will make sure that this particular recording is available in YouTube probably by tomorrow. And we will share the slides link as well. And we will just wait for the next one. So probably the next event is going to happen in next month. Stay tuned, and we will just try to give more information about what is the next event is all about, so we can just meet in the next event. Thank you so much, guys, for your time, and have a good evening and stay safe. Thank you. Bye.
Great. Thank you. Bye.